I'm here at Carlson, Gracie, Upper Tumon, RYZE with my good friend, my training partner, Will. Guys, today we are gonna be going over 5 different concepts that you can utilize to immediately improve your guard retention. So the first concept that we're gonna go over today, guys, is the concept and the understanding of the knee to elbow connection. So why is the knee to elbow connection so important? So let's go flip the perspective and let's go put ourselves in the shoe of the guard player, the guard passer, I'm sorry. So imagine as the guard passer, if we're looking to acquire a position such as side control, it's absolutely paramount that if we want to acquire a position such as side control, we must separate the knee to elbow. For example, I'm gonna have Will on his back here. Just imagine, if your partner has their knee to elbow connected, how can you possibly acquire the side control? Even if I put all my weight on him, it really doesn't matter. As long as your partner has their knee to elbow connected, as the guard passer, you're not gonna be able to acquire side control. So from the guard passing perspective, it's absolutely paramount that I must separate the knee to elbow. Why do we wanna separate the knee to elbow? The reason why is because when you separate the knee to elbow connection, you're opening up a vital portion of your partner's body that when you acquire it will give you and grant you supreme control. And that vital part of the body is the hips, guys. So of course, as the guard passer, whenever I can occupy my partner's hips, that allows me to begin to separate his body into different portions, and I'm able to control him much more effectively. So let's go ahead and flip the roles here. I'll be on the bottom. So whenever we're playing guard, for example, right, it could be any guard, right? Or it can even be somewhat of an open guard where we don't have any grips at the current time. It's absolutely important, guys, that you maintain the mindset of utilizing knee to elbow connection. So knee to elbow connection is a very literal term, but figuratively speaking, you're more so closing off this vital hip space, guys, and you're bringing the knees to the chest. This is very important. Anytime that you're playing guard, you want to typically acquire some form of knee to elbow or knee to chest connection. The further that my knees separate from my body, the more vital space that I'm offering my opponent to control my hips and pass my guard. So absolutely paramount, guys, that when you guys are playing guard, it's extremely important that you maintain the mindset of keeping your elbow to knee. And you can utilize this mindset in numerous sections while playing guard. For example, even sitting guard. When I'm playing sitting guard and my partner's standing in front of me, I typically like to utilize a stance where my feet are somewhat tucked towards my body with my hands in front of me. Even looking at this situation here, look at how I'm closing off the vital space of my hips. Obviously, the further that my knees separate from my body, now this vital portion of my body, which is my hips, is very much exposed. So when you guys are playing guard and you're looking to prevent your opponent from acquiring dominant positions such as side control or even knee on belly, it's absolutely paramount that you maintain a knee to elbow connection. Let's go take it a little bit further. When you guys look at submissions, for example, you look at any submissions in Jiu Jitsu, most especially joint locks. Joint locks require an isolation of a limb. So if you're on the offensive side, you're utilizing your whole body against one of your partner's limbs. So if you think of guard passing in many instances requires the guard passer to begin the process of isolation between the hips and the shoulders, right? Whenever you can create that separation of the hips and the shoulders, or in this instance, the knee to elbow, now the guard passer is going to be able to start utilizing a more effective approach in controlling the body because of the separation of the knee to elbow, right? So when you guys are playing guard, maintain that mindset of utilizing knee to elbow connection. That's extremely important. Let's guys. Hey, what's up guys? We're back. Now let's go look at another concept when it comes to guard retention, and this is the concept of total control. And what exactly is total control? Total control is the maximum usage of frames and grips or hooks. Now, before we talk about total control and go in depth on that, we need to understand the purpose of grips or hooks and the purpose of frames, right? Now let's go understand the purpose of grip. So I'm gonna have my partner Will standing in front of me like this. Now from here, the purpose of a grip or hook is in many instances to prevent any form of backward movement. So let's say I grab both of Will's collars here. If Will was to try to walk away from me, he's currently unable to do that because I'm utilizing grips. And the purpose of grips is to prevent backward movement. Now, let's look at it from the flip side. If grips are utilized to prevent backwards motion, then in some instances, they're not purposeful to prevent forward movement. So if I have both grips here and I'm pulling Will into me, preventing backward motion, that doesn't mean I can prevent him from coming forward, right? So this is where frames come in. Now, what are the purpose of frames? The purpose of a frame is to prevent forward movement, right? So very simply, if I were to frame, let's say Will has his shoulders forward, and I were to frame his shoulders, if he were to try to drive into me, there's just no way that he can currently do that at this time because of the usage of frames, right? But let's go look at it from the flip side from this perspective. If I'm framing Will and the purpose of frames is to prevent forward movement, then typically I don't have anything preventing him from walking backwards, right? So imagine, for example, I'm framing Will, we're here, there's nothing preventing him from going backwards or side to side, right? So we have the purpose of grips and we have the purpose of frames, right? And in order to achieve total control, it's absolutely paramount that we utilize both grips and hooks in combination with frames. Now, let's go take a look at another issue. One very important thing that we need to understand is that in most scenarios, and this isn't a black or white issue, this is just a general mindset to achieve. In most scenarios, you would most likely would like to utilize frames as your priority. Right? In many instances, when it comes to the ambition of a guard passer, a lot of times they're going to be working to come into you close distance. So it's absolutely paramount that we prioritize frames. Now, let's go look at another issue. If we have grips, but we don't have frames, very clearly we can see an issue where if I have grips but I don't have frames, our partner can easily come into us and start passing our guard, right? So it's absolutely paramount that whenever you guys are playing guard, you would like to achieve framing prior to gripping. Of course, you would like to use certain motions that allow you to acquire both grips and frames immediately, but if you had to prioritize one, prioritize framing. Because in many instances, if your partner's passing your guard, they're gonna be coming forward and eventually they would have to close a certain amount of distance. Now, going deeper into frames, specifically you would like to frame primarily at solid bone. So let's go have Will come in front of me here. So if I'm framing at Will's chest, right? Imagine my hand is on his chest, which is that soft tissue. He's still gonna be able to come into me. You see how I cannot prevent this movement here? Because I'm framing his soft tissue as opposed to his bone. Whenever you're framing on solid bone, you're very much able to prevent their forward movement because instead of soft tissue where the force of your frame doesn't allow you to stop their forward movement, whenever you frame on solid bone, that gives you the opportunity to very much prevent them from coming forward. Let's go look at a certain scenario, a very common scenario. So let's say, for example, I'm in a reverse Delieva type situation. Can we face this way? So let's say we're in a reverse Deliva type situation, our partner's on top of us, right? If I have no frame on his upper body, then of course our partner's gonna be able to close distance, right? So remember, we wanna prioritize framing. So let's say our partner has the grip on the collar, or he's got some control at the hip. You wanna frame at the solid bone, right? I don't wanna frame at his chest. See how he can drop his shoulder and still continue to close distance? It's absolutely paramount that we frame at solid bone. Now, a lot of times, another concept that you guys can utilize in conjunction with grips and frames is the ability to pass off. And what exactly is a pass off? A pass off allows us to frame with our upper body so that we can transfer our frame with our upper body to the lower body. Now that we have a frame solidified with the lower body, now we can utilize a grip. Right? So in many instances, guys, from a fundamental perspective, you guys want to focus and prioritize framing, right? That's not to say that achieving a grip at first is incorrect. That's not to say that it's incorrect. But in many instances, it would be more ideal to frame instead of grip at first, right? So typically whenever, like let's say for example, I have Will in front of me, we're in this type of open situation from here. I can achieve a grip first, but I'm not just staying here with this grip. Eventually I would need to utilize and transfer to the purpose of framing at some point. Or if I'm using this grip, I can also turn my hand to activate the heel of my hand here, and now I can use my grip simultaneously with the purpose of gripping and framing, right? So always understand that, guys. Whenever you guys have a grip, you can always convert the grip into a frame, and typically that simply involves a turning of the hand to activate the heel of the hand here. Another example that I can show you guys in terms of simultaneous purpose of grip and frame is, let's say we're in a double unders type situation. So Will's gonna have me in double unders. If I'm here with the grips on the sleeves and I'm pulling and Will's trying to get tighter to me, in many instances, I'm flowing with his agenda. I'm going along with what he's trying to do by pulling on the grips. So what we can do, remember, like I said, a turn of the hand could activate the heel of the hand for the purpose of a frame. So look at how I can turn my hand here, and now look, now I can utilize my heels of my hands here to create a frame. I can start getting my feet back inside, and look, now we can return back to the original purpose of the grip, which is preventing backward movement and utilizing a pulling motion, right? So always remember, guys, that typically when you're in an open guard or any type of guard scenario, typically you would like to prioritize frames. But ideally, you eventually want to progress and evolve to achieving total control, which is the maximum usage of frames and grips, right? So let's go look at another situation. Let's say I'm playing Deliva, right? You look at Deliva, it's such a powerful open guard. And the reason why Deliva is such a powerful open guard is because it allows you to obtain so many different frames and grips that really control your partner. And the beautiful thing, guys, is this. When you achieve total control, it gives you a very opportune time to attack your opponent with minimal risk. Right? So let's say, for example, we're in Deliva. Will has his shoulders forward. Will, can you please square? So here, in Deliva, let's look at this from here. I have a frame with my foot at the hip, right? Once again, solid bone. If I push on Will's thigh, it's not that it's incorrect, but by placing my foot on his thigh, once again, that's going back to soft tissue. We want to frame the actual bone. So I have my foot at the hip, I have a grip at the collar, I have a grip at the ankle, and now look at this, guys. I can even use my thigh in front of his knee and his shin as another source of a frame. And my Deliva hook can be utilized with the purpose of preventing backward motion as another hook as well. Right? So if you look at this, we have a frame with the foot at the hip. We have a grip at the collar, which prevents backward movement. We have a grip at the ankle, which prevents backward movement once again. And another frame with my thigh in front of his knee and shin, along with my deli hook, preventing backward motion, right? So that's a perfect example of total control. Guys, like I said, from a fundamental perspective, especially if you're a white belt, typically utilize more frames and also combine them with grips as well. But I would say prioritizing frames is absolutely important, guys. So don't forget, understand the purpose of a grip or a hook, which is preventing backward movement. And if we're looking at a frame, this is to prevent forward movement. You want to combine both in your game for maximum effectiveness. Hey, what's up, guys? We're back going over another concept when it comes to properly playing guard and guard retention. So the next concept that we want to discuss is the concept of understanding how to keep your shoulders and your hips in alignment. This is so crucial. And the analogy that I very much like to use when sharing this type of information with newer practitioners is imagine you're doing a simple body weight squat, or if you lift weights, imagine you're doing a barbell squat, right? Imagine I'm here, I'm standing up. Whenever you do a barbell squat or a simple body weight squat, you have your shoulders and your hips in the same line, right? Imagine if I were to turn my hips in one direction and have my shoulders in another, right? I definitely imagine I'm doing this squat with my body weight, but imagine if I were to incorporate a heavy barbell. I wouldn't be able to maximize the strength of my body with my hips facing one way and my shoulders facing another. And this concept is very much applicable whenever we're playing guard. Typically, when we're playing guard, it's absolutely paramount that we have our shoulders and our hips in constant alignment. Anytime that there's a separation or a misalignment of the shoulders and the hips, typically that's not going to fare very beneficial for us. For example, let's say I have Will on his back, right? Will's going to be on his back, and imagine here, he has his shoulders facing the sky, right? Let's go and turn this way. So imagine Will has his shoulders facing the sky, right? And his hips are facing in another direction. Remember what we talked about with concept number 1, which is elbow to knee connection. Typically, in order for you to achieve elbow to knee connection, you would have to have your hips and shoulders aligned. See how I was able to bring his elbow to knee together? If I were to, even if Will just turned his hips this way and his shoulders are facing the sky, you can see now there's a space that's opening up. And a lot of times with very skilled guard passers, all they need is this very minimal space where the hip is open and they can begin to occupy the hips, control, and pass the guard. So not only does hips and shoulder alignment allow you to properly use the maximum capacity of your body, it also very much is symbiotic in terms of following with the concept that we originally discussed, which is elbow to knee connection, right? So anytime you guys are in some type of guard situation or even passing, a lot of times it's very important to have your shoulders and your hips in proper alignment. As soon as I can misalign from the opposite perspective as a guard passer, as soon as I can misalign my partner's hips to face one way with the shoulders going another, you can see how this begins to open up certain space, which allows us to control the hip as a guard passer and which creates vulnerability as the guard player, right? But imagine if I were to turn Will's hips the other way and his shoulders follow suit, you can see he'll still be very much able to keep the knee to elbow connection, right? Of course, typically, you would like to have your hips always facing your opponent, But at least from this situation here, Will is still able to maintain the integrity of his knee to elbow connection. Imagine if his hips continue to face this way and his shoulders return back to flat. Look at how that creates such a space here that we can utilize as a guard passer to control and acquire better position. So always understand that, guys. When you guys are playing guard, very fundamentally sound body positioning always keeps your shoulders and your hips in constant alignment. Us guys. Hey, what's up, guys? We're back with another concept for you guys to apply to your game to improve your guard and also improve your guard retention as well, guys. So the next concept we're going to discuss is something that I learned from a John Danaher instructional, immediately applied it to my game, and this was just last year. Immediately applied it to my game, and this simple mindset, as fundamental as it is, very much allowed me to improve ace and spades with my game, guys. And this concept that we're going to discuss now is always having the bottom of your feet facing your opponent. Now, what exactly does that mean? Because if you think of the opposite, right? Let's say Will's in front of me, he's going to be passing my guard, right? Whenever we have the bottom of our feet facing our opponent, that allows us in many instances to place, going back to what we discussed with frames, it allows us to frame our opponent. When we have the bottom of our foot facing our opponent, it allows us to frame, it allows us to create posts. But imagine, for example, let's say Will was to grab the inside part of my ankle here. Just go ahead and grab this actual ankle here. You see, look at this. My bottom of my foot is now facing away from him. How can I utilize my foot for the purpose of framing when I cannot even turn the bottom of my foot facing towards him? You guys can see that. So it's absolutely important that when you guys are playing guard, you always want to have the mindset of having the bottom of your feet facing your opponent. Now, to take it a step further, we want to have the bottom of our feet facing our opponent. In many instances, when we have the bottom of our feet facing our opponent, that also allows us to have our hips facing our opponent, which is absolutely crucial. In certain techniques and certain guards in Jiu Jitsu, there's brief moments where your hips do face away from your opponent, but from a fundamental perspective, you always want to have your hips facing your opponent. And if we utilize the concept we discussed before of our shoulders and our hips in the same line, that allows us to properly have our opponent in our line of sight, with our shoulders facing our opponent and our hips facing our opponent. So always understand that, guys. Whenever you feel that your opponent is pushing your foot down or redirecting your foot in a type of way, a lot of times by him or her moving your foot in an opposite direction to face away from them, that also in turn makes your hip face away from your opponent, and that usually isn't a very effective position to be in. So let me show you guys a simple type of drill that you guys can understand the true effectiveness of this concept, right? So imagine Will's gonna be on top of me, I'm gonna have my feet up, and he's gonna be pushing my legs down. He's gonna grab the top of my ankles, pushing my legs down. From here, if I don't maneuver my feet or adjust the positioning of my feet, Will simply can push my legs down, cut a corner, right? And utilize some form of passing. So a simple drill that you guys can utilize for beginning practitioners is whenever you get in a situation where you have your partner grabbing the top of your ankle, make it a habit to swim your feet inside, right? So imagine he's pushing my feet down. Make it a habit of swimming your feet inside. This is so important, guys. Whenever you swim your feet inside, now you're beginning to occupy inside space. And once again, because our feet, the bottom of our feet are facing our opponent, now we can begin to create posts and we can begin to progress in the form of offense, start acquiring grips. So very important, always get in the habit, guys. If somebody's pushing your foot down, swim your feet inside. For example, let's go back to Del Eva, another position that I very much like. Let's say we're here. I have the grip on the collar. I'm here. A lot of times I enter situations where your partner is going to push your foot down. If I stay here, look at this, my foot is facing down. If I stay here, Will's going to use this opportunity because there's no frame on his hips. Now he can start closing space, utilize a knee slice, another very common pass in Jiu Jitsu. And now we're in a position that's a little bit more difficult. So from here in Del Eva, if he pushes my foot down, another fundamental thing to understand, swimming your feet inside. So if he's pushing my foot down, I bring my knee to my chest. Remember that concept, symbiotic with the first concept we discussed, knee to elbow connection. I bring my knee to my chest, and look, I can swim my foot inside, and then now I can start reacquiring my frames. Let's go give you guys another angle. Let's say your partner pushes your foot down. Look at how I bring my knee to my chest, which is closing off my hip space, which is very important. I bring my foot inside. I can place it on the bicep, and once again, I can return to the hip, right? So this is just another example, guys, of understanding the very important concept of always having the bottom of your feet facing the direction of your opponent. It's very important, guys. All right, guys. So for our final concept of today, to improve your guard retention and overall your understanding of how to properly play guard, we're going to discuss a certain mindset shift that everyone must go through if they're looking to progress in their jiu-jitsu journey and improve the guard to their best of the ability. This mindset shift that we're looking to achieve is the mindset shift of understanding that framing is not pushing. And I'm not saying that pushing is incorrect, but typically in jiu-jitsu, we're not pushing our opponent. A lot of times we're framing. Remember, the purpose of a frame is to prevent forward movement. If we're looking at the purpose of a push, the purpose of a push is to move your opponent away from you, right? This would be a push, right? I'm moving my partner away from me. But if my partner were to drive into me, right? See, go ahead and drive into me, Will. We're framing, right? We're preventing forward movement, right? So understand that. Framing is not pushing, right? And one of the more common mistakes that I've seen, that I've experienced for myself, that I've seen with newer practitioners is we get in this habit of when we place our feet on top of our opponent, when we place our feet on our opponent from a guard playing perspective, I think sometimes when our partner drives into us, I've seen people try to push. For example, let's say Will's on top of me here. He's passing my guard, and I try to push him away. You see? But what happens when we push? Did you guys notice that? What happens when we push? Say Will's coming on top of me, I push him away. What happens when I push, guys? When we push, what happens is that not only are we violating this last principle that we're talking about, which is understanding the difference between framing and pushing, but by pushing our partner away, especially with our feet, a lot of times we begin to violate the very first concept which we spoke about, which is the concept of understanding the importance of knee to elbow connection, right? If I'm pushing my partner away, I'm in many instances separating my knee from the rest of my body. And understand, whenever your knees begin to separate from your body, in many instances, that opens up the vital space, which is your hips, which is extremely crucial for a guard passer to control. If a guard passer is never able to control your hips, in many instances, they won't be able to pass your guard. But as soon as a guard passer can control your hips, in many instances, your guard will be passed. So very crucial, guys, that you understand the difference between framing and pushing. So for example, let's go revert back to that situation, Will coming on top of me, right? Let's say Will's on top of me, we're here. Look, instead of pushing to where my knees separate from the rest of my body. Remember, the purpose of a frame is not to create distance by pushing. The purpose of a frame is to maintain and solidify distance by placing our frames in appropriate places of the body, such as solid bone, right? So now look, if Will was to try to drive into me, there's no way. There's no way because I'm framing, right? And not only am I framing, go ahead and come into me, Will. Not only am I framing, I'm maintaining the integrity of my knee to elbow connection, right? So understand that, guys. That's so crucial in your jiu-jitsu journey. Is you want to very much distinguish when to frame and when to push. And typically in jiu-jitsu, there aren't many situations where pushing is beneficial, right? Of course, there's some movements, some techniques that require a certain push, and you're going to come across those. But I would say as a general rule, especially for beginning practitioners, is understand that framing is not pushing. Put that in your mindset. I think it very much begins with the mindset, because a lot of times I think pushing comes from not being comfortable with this uncomfortable position. I understand as a newer practitioner who's never done jiu-jitsu or just starting out, having someone on top of you attempting to close distance and smother you can very much be an intimidating situation, right? And because of that intimidation, you might be pressured and tempted to push your opponent off of you. But a lot of times, just remember, pushing requires the usage of more muscular strength. And if you're starting out in jiu-jitsu and maybe you're less athletic or you're not as strong as some of your other training partners, then you're making it a battle of physicality as opposed to understanding how to properly place frames so that you can maintain distance more effectively and efficiently as well, right? So hope you guys very much benefit from all the different concepts that we've discussed. If you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to me here on YouTube or on Instagram at AnthonyCruz_BJJ. This is my partner, Will. Guys, thank you so much for having us. Us.